Janet Rawson from Twisted Events Presents. So thank you for joining us today.
Hello, it's lovely to be asked to join you.
Fabulous. So a quick introduction. I usually say to how I met the guest today. So Janet and I have met on a few windy women. It's quite glamorous on the screen today. For those that you know, I talk about 8 kinds of listening to help us to manage ourselves through change, but also to manage other people through change. And we had a great conversation at the end of the walk about how you as a training company and give people the opportunity to listen to it and get feedback really on how it goes. So tell me a little bit more about you, your business, and how you've got into it, because I was just absolutely intrigued.
Okay, my background is I am a working professional actress and I'm also a published playwright. And I say the published playwright because I design a lot of the material that we deliver for our clients. And way back when, in the early 90s, having been sacked from a waitressing job, I met with 2 other actors and we said, you know, there has to be a way that we can transfer our skills to help within the training world. And we all managed to get a job at a hospital, Guy's Hospital in London, where we played a variety of difficult patients for trainee doctors, so young student doctors. So we were hypochondriacs. We were particularly good at that. We were over-talkative. We were quite good at that as well. We had to do giving bad news. So these poor young doctors having to tell us that our child is not going to make it. Another one of the scenarios I remember very strongly was these young doctors having to ask us if we would be prepared to give our child's organs to another family. And so it was a real sort of value in, we realised the value of the work that we do because we're trained, we can cry at will, we can rant at will, we can go stony silent at will, and we don't get embarrassed by it because we're playing a character. And it was so exciting that the 2 guys I was with, we started a company that became global, which was very exciting. So we started then working in other languages, and we were then working with European actors, with Asia Pacific actors. So we managed to build up a really lovely network of highly professional actors who can lend their skills to the business world, because not every actor makes a good business role player. That's how it started.
Yeah, and so one of the other examples you gave to me, and I think this is where the correlation for me is when I'm working with people to develop their listening skills, one of the things they find difficult is to listen to emotional people, or even someone that is talking a lot. But the one that particularly resonated with the story you were telling me was when you're running an appraisal and a member of staff starts crying. And so just tell me a little bit more about that, because I think it was about something you said around what happens when you just switch the emotion off and the person's. So just tell me a little bit more about what's the benefit of that experience.
Okay, so using appraisals as an example, sometimes when there's a new appraisal system is coming into an organisation, there's lots of uncomfortableness amongst the staff. Is it going to change their bonus strategy or whatever? And it's also, so we're normally working with managers or supervisors who are having to deliver the appraisals. So we deliberately create some challenging characters, I suppose one might say. So if the manager has to say to somebody, I'm really sorry, but you know, your timekeeping, we've told you time and again, and you are consistently late, and that has not changed over the last 6 months. The character might have learnt through life that bursting into tears means that the other person moves away and says, do you want a cup of tea? Don't worry about it, it's all fine. So as actors, we can challenge those managers by just going very quiet, allowing a little teardrop to drop down the cheek. If that doesn't work, we go into slightly more sobbing-y noises to really try and make sure that the manager will say, don't worry, don't worry, go make a cup, we'll meet again next week. So that the crying person has sometimes used the crying as a strategy to not have to deal with feedback to improve their performance.
And that might even be an unconscious strategy, mightn't it? They may not even be conscious.
It may well be. It may well be unconscious strategy.
And I think also that I imagine with the managers there, because I think the thing that intrigued me is you said, so from a listening perspective, and just for the audience, if you're looking, I'm sure you've all had it does impact us emotionally, doesn't it, when somebody else is, or some people it does, not everybody is affected. But if you are, it's about how can you hold that space and recognize that's an emotional reaction, a response. It's temporary, it's transient, it's a reaction to something they've heard, and then allow them to compose themselves. And then ask them what they'd like to have happen next, or given what you've heard. So it's almost like this is just a response, it's a reaction, and you allow it to have its space, and then you can invite the next steps, rather than going to what you've done, sort of like we call it drama, rescuing people or trying to shove them away so you don't have to deal with it. Because that could also be the default, I presume, with the manager as well, that their unconscious or conscious bias is that they'll try and push it away so they don't have to deal with somebody who's upset.
And also, human beings don't want to upset other human beings. So the manager will often feel very guilty and responsible. And actually, it's not their baggage. So if they can hold their time sort of in a nanosecond and allow the other person to cry out, shout out, whatever they want, and then the manager can say, oh, I can see that you're very upset. Let's explore that.
Yeah.
So it's for the managers who are training, it's about learning some other skills in order to really listen, not just through the ears, but through the body language and through the body energy and through the intonation of words. They can pick up all sorts of signals, which means they can really help that individual moving forwards.
Yeah, and I have to just put it out there, because I was that sort of member of staff 20 years ago. There's a lots of things that happened, but not so much at work. I think to have a good start, my parents, in my personal life, gave me feedback. Nearly always it resulted in tears. And it took me a long time. It's only when people started holding that space without stopping it, that you got to the other side of it and sorted it out. And actually we need to have people that can hold it. But you also talked about how it can actually help the managers. They change from being like sobbing to, I'm all okay now. It kind of, it helps in their subconscious mind to show it that these emotions they're things that we can turn off and on, and that we have some control over. I know that you're trained to do that, and us other beings that are sensitive might just blubber without, I don't have any control over them. They just come out when I get very emotional or excited about stuff. And what's the learning for the managers when you do that, when you actually sort of instantly go from really, really distraught to all composed again? What's the benefits, or what's the learning they get from that?
I think the benefits are that they realize that we are playing a character, but we are also, obviously because we're in this business role, we are also facilitators. So our role as actors is to be really helping the delegates to bring all of their brilliant skills to the fore. And that means that we can step out of role of the sobbing heap and say, that was really great. What you just did then, do you know what you just said just then, why that works so well? And we can, we also give the delegates the opportunity to say, time out, I don't know what to say, and they can talk to their peer group and they can talk different strategies. We can then go back into the role play, so the actor can go back into sobbing their heart out or whatever it is. And the manager can try 1, 2, or 3 different strategies that have come from the group to see what will resonate with this particular character.
I think that's the bit. It's about, because often when we do something, it will change somebody's state quite quickly, and the actors having that ability to get into that moment.
And just very slight, I'm losing your voice.
Sorry, it just went a bit wobbly as well. I was saying there is something that magical happens when you can physically experience listening to a human that's upset, and then getting through the process and realizing it was an emotional reaction to something. There's something. And I think too many people in the world, because they don't know how to listen, they don't have these training experiences to practice, they don't get to the start. So you have a build-up of these non-finished transactions, where they're left feeling awful, either awful that they've upset somebody, or just feeling maybe in contempt of the other person for always getting so upset. And it really doesn't help, does it, form those beautiful relationships that then make the businesses work effectively.
And also, if somebody is very emotional, in real life, they're very emotional, and they tend to get very upset in these sorts of situations, it's also allowing the manager to understand what's going through that person's mind, that they might be very embarrassed about the fact that they burst into tears every single time. And if the manager and that character can get through it, they have a stronger relationship moving forward, because the crying person knows that that manager doesn't think they're stupid, doesn't think they're gormless, doesn't think, oh God, heavens to Betsy, so that they then can move on to have a stronger relationship, which means the crying individual may need to cry less, because the manager's listened.
I can absolutely guarantee that for any managers watching this, that was definitely my journey. If I hadn't come across the listening skills and hadn't got into the listening community, I get told I was passive aggressive, and it really hurt, and it did create tears in the moment. But somebody hold space to get through the emotion, that I could actually hear the feedback that was going to help me to grow, to help me to be a better person. But and if people hadn't had that ability, I was mortified that I cried. I recognize how uncomfortable it is for people, but I physically didn't have a way of stopping it. And the listening and holding that space actually did stop it, which is the irony of the situation, is that if they can hold that space, it can make such a big difference to people.
And in exactly the same vein, if you have somebody who is highly defensive, so the hint of a piece of challenging feedback just makes them go into a shell of monosyllabic nothingness. Again, the manager learning to listen with a really difficult, prickly character like that, who will make them feel uncomfortable. Again, that defensive character will learn that they don't need to be that defensive. And hopefully the relationship will improve as they go forward within the organisation.
Yeah. And that brings me back to the one you said at the very beginning, was the person that talks a lot. For those that know me, no, I like to talk. I'm a trained natural talker, trained listener. and I would do that, but I have the metaphor of, like, someone's asking me a question and I'm desperately wanting to say the right thing to keep the other person happy, and else. And so it was only when people started to actually ask me questions to sort of almost slow my thinking down, so I could actually organize my thoughts in a much better way. So listening has such a massive opportunity to help people to change these behaviours. But I really want to put the attention on your company, which is, if you do need to find out more, the link will be below. But it's Twisted Events Presents.co.uk.
It is.
And this is drama-based training that gives people that real life experience of being able to stop and start the emotion, which you can't get in real life. When it comes, it comes. If they're talking a lot, or they're defensive, or they're crying, it will just come at you, and you can't hit the pause button and go, what do we want to do with this situation right now? So I really take my hat off, and I can see the value in what you're doing, and I want to wish you all the best for the future.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.